Hello and welcome. This is session 3 of day 1 of the ALS United Greater New York Education and Resource Summit. My name is Katie Cakounes and I'll be your moderator for this session. If this is your first time joining us today, welcome. Today's sessions are a collaboration between ALS United and Her ALS Story, which I'm a proud member of. Her ALS Story seeks to raise awareness that ALS impacts young women diagnosed before age 35, and it provides a community for us to connect, learn from each other, and find support so we can live our best lives. The theme for this current session is intimacy. So, as young women in our 20s and 30s, intimacy is something that we discuss often in Her ALS Story. So, we were really excited to collaborate on this presentation with ALS United. Titled Voices from the Community, the following presentation highlights lived experiences and the importance of open, meaningful conversations in ALS care. Please join me in welcoming Gioia Ciani, Shara Holzberg, Desi Kessler, and Alexandra Cavalier. Gioia Ciani is an occupational therapy educator and advocate dedicated to advancing compassionate, person-centered care for individuals living with ALS and their families. Gioia brings both clinical insight and a deep commitment to amplifying community voices around topics that are often overlooked, including intimacy and relationships. Shara Holzberg is the Chief Care Services Officer at ALSU and a speech language pathologist by training. With decades of experience, Shara has helped individuals maintain their independence, identity, and ability to communicate as their needs evolve. She is a passionate advocate for dignity and autonomy, including supporting open, thoughtful conversations around intimacy, sexuality, and relationships. Alex Cavalier is the current president of Her ALS Story. She lives in Cheshire, Connecticut with her husband, 3 dogs, and 2 cats, which she lovingly calls her zoo. She used to work as an attorney, specializing in general corporate work and mergers and acquisitions. She was diagnosed at the age of 28 in the beginning of 2020. Last but not least, Desi Kessler is 40 years old and lives in New York with her husband Paul and daughter Birdie. Birdie is 12 years old and has never known her mom without ALS. Desi is a tequila connoisseur and avid partier. Surprisingly, she's also the disciplinarian. So, welcome everyone. These are our 4 panelists today, and I'm going to pass the mic off to Gioia to get us started.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Katie. That was an awesome introduction, and Gioia is going to put our PowerPoint up in just 1 second, I think. Sorry, everyone, we're having some technical issues. But I'm really excited, as Katie said, for all of us to be here together and to have collaborated on this. And I'm not sure how many people were listening to the presentation that we had before this. But our conversation today really blends beautifully with what was said in the session before by Maureen and Dr. Thomas and our ALS Story panelists. We're going to focus a little bit and shift today in this session to a little bit more of the physical side of the intimacy and sexuality. So just hang with us for 1 second. Oh, sorry, there we go. We got it. Okay. All right. I think we got it, everyone. Yay. All right. Thank you guys for bearing with us with that. Okay, so as I mentioned, we are talking about intimacy and sexuality today. So the first thing is kind of just to define what is what. So intimacy is a deep sense of closeness, connection, knowing, being known by another person. And sexuality is the physical, biological, erotic dimension of the human experience and expression. One expression of physical intimacy is sexuality. It is not the only type of intimacy, and that's what we're going to focus on a little bit more today. So let's start with emotional. Sorry, with emotional intimacy, that's the core connection, right? So in many ways, it's safety, it's vulnerability, it's feeling safe to share your desires, your fears, your needs, insecurities without the worry of rejection or judgment. It's about being seen and feeling accepted. Physical intimacy, which we just alluded to, yes, sex, but it's also about the everyday physical touch and intimacy that many long-term couples stop prioritizing. So it's holding hands, it's cuddling, massage, kiss on the forehead, which I know Desi had mentioned that in our prior session for those who were listening to it. Resting your hand on your partner's legs. Those are just small ways of saying you're wanted. I love being close to you without using words. And when that connection is missing, it can also lead it can lead to a lot of feelings of rejection, resentment, shame, a whole bunch of emotions that we will also get to. Intellectual intimacy. This is we're actually talking about things kind of connection, meaningful conversations, mental engagement, again, feeling truly seen and accepted by your partner. When life becomes focused on logistics, in many situations, this type of intimacy can easily fade. And experiential intimacy is the type of intimacy that comes with the sharing of new experiences, creating new connections together, especially ones that bring a little bit of nervousness and excitement. It builds closeness. It helps couples really feel like teammates. Research in social psychology actually says that these type of shared experience involving like novelty, risk, or creativity can really strengthen the emotional bonds. And it also can boost some hormones that are linked to connection and reward. So, however, one thing, Joy, can you move to the next slide, please? Thank you. So there are a lot of common misconceptions. So as we alluded to before, sex and intimacy are not the same thing. Reality is that they do overlap, but they are distinctly different. And intimacy can exist without sex. Sex can happen without true emotional intimacy. Another myth is that sex always creates intimacy. Um, that that is not true. Sex does not automatically create emotional closeness. Intimacy is built through trust, vulnerability, communication, shared experiences, as I mentioned before. Myth number 3, intimacy is only for couples. Deep intimacy actually exists in friendships, in family relationships, in close human connections. It is not exclusive to romance or sexual relationships. And the fourth myth is that you need both to be fulfilled. That may be true for some people, but some people can experience deep intimacy without sexuality, and vice versa, sexuality without emotional intimacy. Fulfillment really just looks different for everyone. And the reason we're talking about this today is because these topics, um, closeness is something that we all crave as humans. So we know this is important. We know this is something that everybody is experiencing in some form or another. But what we also know is that many professionals do not inquire about this, uh, not just in the ALS community, but just professionals at all if you're a patient and you're seeing a doctor. So here's some stats that we pulled. Um, Studies found that 40% of patients in the general population report having never discussed their sexual life with a medical professional, while 91% wish that they had been invited to do so. Of both people with ALS and caregivers with ALS who were surveyed, 90% report that no healthcare professional has ever initiated conversation with them about sexual intimacy. And 92% reported that there has been an impact, and a negative one at that, that has affected their life. So, it's important to note that pre-illness intimacy in a relationship is a predictor of the current intimacy and intimate relationships. As humans, we all come into every relationship with baggage. That's not my forte, nor is it Gioia's, so we're not going to touch on that today. But it's just something to keep in mind when you're having these conversations, both from the professional side and from the patient side. Um, but to that point, science does say that ALS does not directly affect sexual function. So there's a gap here that we know we have to address. I'm going to pause for a second in my speech and just say, Desi and Alex, I know in our brainstorming conversations that we've had leading up to today's session, you guys had some thoughts on this as well, if you'd like to jump on.
Video too?
I have always been really open about everything, maybe a little too open. My husband is the opposite. Before ALS, we had no real need to discuss sex and intimacy outside of the bedroom. But after my diagnosis, I felt like I was constantly talking about it. I think for some, talking about sex kind of ruins the fantasy of it all. But with ALS, you have to make a mindful effort to talk about it. At first, I tried to be casual about the changes, but that didn't work for me. Epic fail. We had to make time to discuss it. We had to be honest. Communication is key in all relationships, but especially when you have ALS, because your partner has no idea what's happening with your body. You can't just be passive about it and expect your sex life to evolve naturally. I had to get really specific about things, like the exact point where my legs couldn't open any further, or that the disturbing noises coming out of my mouth were positive and there was no need for concern. A therapist can be helpful in facilitating these conversations, which we found to be true for our relationship.
Thank you.
After my husband started caring for me, that is when the magic stopped. After menstruation and butt wiping, my vagina was ruined for him.
Thank you guys. Such interesting perspectives to hear from you guys. Joy, I'll let you take it.
Those are amazing comments. And I think that brings us to our next slide. Communication and connection. So sexual interest is just as important as any other self-care activity. And it's important at any age, and it's important despite abilities or disabilities. This idea about reconnecting, right? It helps to have conversations about intimacy. ALS often gets in the way of the simple day-to-day things you used to do for yourself as a couple, and not just in the bedroom. sexual difficulties, avoiding these issues can easily lead into an avoidance of sex and other intimate contact. Fear and worries. Confiding in each other often brings partners closer and may help lessen or resolve these feelings. We all want feeling. We all want to feel like we're good lovers and we can please our partner. And many of us are insecure about our ability to do that in general. Just making sure that your partner knows that you still find him or her attractive and that they still please you. And you know what? That your vagina is still viable, right? When we talk about communicating, yeah, partners for sure, but being in reflective, right? And sometimes it's even talking it out to a therapist. The idea is just to be patient with yourselves, with others, with circumstances, and just keep asking those questions like, what are we looking for? What is like my favorite way that you touch me is, or how can we continue to satisfy each other? One thing I would like more of is, one of my sexual experiences with you was or is, and what new things can we try? So even though my legs aren't opening all the way, I'm sure we can figure this out. I'm willing and I'm able. And then just, to continue on with this idea about keeping communication and connection is that once again, we know that it affects more than physical function because it does play a significant impact and a role on an emotional connection, communication, and intimacy. People and carers experience depression, loneliness, changes in body image and self-esteem, as well as fear related to the progression of the disease, dependence or burdening a partner. Role changes. Role changes are incredibly important. You think about the change in roles within relationships as relationships progress, but particularly when a partner takes on caregiving responsibilities or has the disorder themselves. There's a lot of emotional and physical changes that happen, and that can affect closeness. In addition, the fatigue and difficulty initiating conversations about intimacy can create barriers in connection, even when the desire for closeness remains strong. I think it's important to recognize that intimacy extends way beyond sexuality and includes the emotional support, the touch, the communication, and really the shared experiences that help maintain these meaningful connections throughout the disease process.
Sorry to interrupt, Gioia, but Alex had a comment on communication that she'd like to share.
Absolutely. Thank you.
As I mentioned earlier, communication is key. For me, I started losing my voice from the jump. I had to get creative about the way I expressed my love. I've found, for us, it was received best and most natural through text. I would send texts about everything from sexy texts to expressing gratitude and love. We talk about how we can help make our relationship better. Even to this day, we found different types of intimacy, like just being able to sit on the couch together or playing games. It had to change, and that was really difficult, but it's worth the effort.
Wow, Alexandra, that is so powerful. And I think of texting, septing. I can't say that right. In a different light right now. We're just thinking about, well, what can we do when we have these barriers to sexual health? This slide really highlights sometimes how loneliness and emotional disconnection can become a major barrier to sexual health and intimacy for both pals and partners. As roles shift toward caregiving, couples sometimes begin to feel more like patient and caregiver than romantic partners, and that can create a profound emotional distance. I'll read the quote from Philip in full. It's not fully on the slide, so I'm going to take a minute to read it. Paul says it's tricky. From the carer point of view, I can say with certainty that most times I feel extremely lonely. Like I'm only needed as a nurse to facilitate meds, schedules, physical needs, cooking, housekeeping, being both parents, all the while feeling helpless watching the person I love change. There's really a thank you or a please or words of love, yet we continue to show up daily, prioritizing our loved ones' physical and mental needs over our own. The emotional connection that we crave and miss from our loved ones falls to the bottom of the priority list. And without emotional connection, there is no desire to be intimate. Personally, I have zero desire for it. And another quote from one of our pals, and Karen says, I just want to be seen. The loneliness, when not ever actually being alone, can be overwhelming. I think these caregiver quotes reflect the exhaustion, the isolation, the loss of emotional reciprocity that many partners experience, while the patient quotes remind us that even when surrounded by people, individuals with ALS may feel unseen and deeply alone. These experiences emphasize the intimacy. That intimacy is not only about physical ability, but really about feeling emotionally connected, feeling valued, and feeling understood. Recognizing and addressing these emotional barriers is an important part of the holistic ALS care.
Thank you, Gioia. And to that point about, it really is holistic care to address these issues. And as we'll kind of be bouncing back and forth to the different strategies and resources, that kind of is a good lead into the ALS multidisciplinary clinic teams. Really, one of the greatest strengths, I think, about ALS care is that you have this kind of team approach. You're not expected to navigate this alone. There's different members of your ALS clinic team that can really help answer your questions. Don't be shy. Open up about them, bring things up. I think, as we mentioned before, the who addresses the topic is kind of where our first barrier lies. Whether you're concerned about physical changes, safety, emotional well-being, energy conservation, medications. There could be medications for anxiety or depression that could alter some of your mood and then may kind of help with some of these other feelings that come up because of those emotions. These are really things that your team is there to help you with. Many providers have access to resources that you may not know exist. And if they don't, I will bet you that they are willing to help research solutions and connect you with the support. I have not met one professional in this community who is not willing to jump in, roll up their sleeves, and find you answers if they don't know it. So lean in to your teams. Support groups can also be really valuable. Often others want to talk about these topics too, right? Similar to your team, your peers may want to be talking about this too, but this topic is a little taboo, and sometimes we're just waiting for somebody else to bring it up first and start the conversation. The online communities, some of the ALS forums that exist, provide a space for conversation, shared experience, support. You can participate actively, post anonymously, or just read and learn from others and maybe just recognize, oh, someone else has the same emotion and has the same thought process that I do. Therapists, are also a really good resource. This was touched upon in the prior session with Maureen and Dr. Thomas. Joy, can you go to the next slide, please? Emotional counseling is a really important piece of this as well. So that can be a variety of people. It could be a social worker. It could be a psychologist, a psychotherapist. We have even a link here if you wanted to look up specific sexual educators. Individual therapy might be helpful. Maybe it's talking about it, like I said, in your support group. It could be one of the virtual support groups that ALS United offers. It could be a support group that you've kind of created on your own, her ALS story. I know you guys have all your side chats, so I'm sure I have to imagine conversations like this are coming up there. Otherwise, you would not have brought this topic to our attention today. Also, as was mentioned previously, we now do have a mental health initiative through ALS United that connects individuals with therapists who specialize in working in the ALS community. Not necessarily specific to this topic, but that said, I know that they do have a little bit more insight into this because they have a better understanding of the illness. So if anyone wants more information, please feel free to reach out to your care services team. We can certainly help with that, but no pressure at all. Just my little plug. Sorry. But the takeaway here is we want to stop comparing your current sex life to what you had in the past. And there's a really good quote that Gioia and I have found in the past, and we've done this talk before, and so we've used this, but it really rings true. And we have part of it up here, so I'm going to read you the whole quote. If you can't cut meat because your hand trembles, that doesn't mean you stop eating. If you don't get exactly the sexual menu that you're used to, you have to learn to compromise and try another recipe. And I think that's really just an important takeaway to discuss here. And then another piece that I briefly mentioned before about medications, there are a handful of professionals that you can reach out to inquire about what works best for you. I know by no means are Gioia and I saying these are the things that you should be doing or the medications you should be taking. Please consult with your physician, considering in any time you will adjust or take or avoid a medication that may negatively impact your sexual function. But some tips that Gioia and I have learned from the doctors that we've worked with over the years is that perhaps taking a pain medication prior, approximately 30 minutes before sexual activity if needed. A lot of times now, these type of intimate or sexual activities are a little bit more planned than they were before. So that's something that might be a little bit easier to fit in than maybe it had been in the past. Alcohol, tobacco, marijuana can negatively affect sexual function. I know, Desi, I don't know if you have something prepared for this about marijuana use, and there's positive sides that we've heard from the community on this as well. And before I have you say that, Des, just one thing. I also just want to mention that medications used to reduce saliva are really helpful for reducing saliva, but they are drying. And so they may dry other areas of your body as well. So that's just something to consider when you're planning your day. Des, did you want to jump in? Got it.
This is directly from our cannabis expert member, Angelina. Cannabis and sex. All the meds we take, like SSRIs, muscle relaxers, benzos, physically anesthetize our privates, which makes it difficult to climax or even enjoy sex. However, THC is not only an aphrodisiac, but it increases sensitivity all over the body, especially in the female nether region. I recommend using a THC lube, which are commonly found in dispensaries. I also recommend taking a gummy or tincture in your tube to enhance the effect. I would do a 2-to-1 CBD THC ratio because THC alone can cause muscles to cramp. But by adding some CBD, your muscles will actually relax and you'll still benefit from the heightened sensitivity. I can still make myself come with only one finger that barely works, as long as I'm high. Try it the next time you have sex.
Thank you, Angelina via Desi for that one. Yeah, just a very interesting perspective that I'm not sure as professionals that that's something that has crossed our mind. So again, with everything here, talk to your physician before you take or don't take any medications. My disclaimer. Gioia, next slide.
So, wow, I'm blown away by the comments. I have to say, I didn't know some of that. It's a learning experience as well. This slide highlights how fear and concerns about physical safety can become significant barriers in intimacy for individuals with ALS and partners. Things like as respiratory weakness and physical limitations progress, even simple forms of affection, such as hugging, may feel physically uncomfortable or unsafe. The quotes from Paul and Natalie reflect uncertainty and anxiety many couples experience surrounding breathing, positioning, exertion, and physical closeness. Paul says, hugging causes too much pressure on my diaphragm. No bueno, right? Natalie, I was nervous he would not be able to breathe, but we decided to try. These fears can lead couples to avoid intimacy altogether, not because the desire or the connection is gone, but because there's real fear. There's worry about causing discomfort, about causing injury, or even respiratory distress. Important, open communication, education, adaptive strategies. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that later on. And guidance from your healthcare professionals can help maintain safety, closeness, and intimacy while respecting the physical changes and the physical needs of others. As we move from understanding fear and safety concerns, it's important to recognize how these fears directly influence intimacy with relationships affected by the disease. Fear often reduces initiation of intimacy, as both the pals and their partner may worry about breathing difficulties, fatigue, discomfort, or even causing real physical harm. Over time, safety concerns can begin to override emotional desires and that connection, even when the need for closeness remains strong. There are supportive strategies that we can use to help couples maintain intimacy more safely and more comfortably, and just feel more secure, including education on positioning, education on energy conservation strategies, pacing activities, and using sort of like a trial and adapt approach to discover what works best for each couple. These conversations are so important because they really help normalize intimacy concerns and empower couples to adapt rather than to withdraw from connection. I love that quote earlier. Shara said, it's not the sex life you used to have, right? It's like, now this is the sex life we have. We're going to change and we're going to mold and we're going to figure it out together. ALS itself causes significant physical and emotional fatigue for the individual living with the disease and their partner. We're going to keep saying it over and over again because it is so strong, especially when we combine all of that with the ongoing demands of work, of parenting, of caregiving, household responsibilities, and daily life. Exhaustion can become really overwhelming and leave little energy for remaining for intimacy and emotional connection. Caregiving responsibilities are physically demanding and emotionally overwhelming, leaving partners really feeling depleted by the end of the day. These quotes from Paul and Margie and Anonymous reflect not only physical exhaustion, but also the emotional weight of continuously supporting loved one while feeling helpless in the face of a progressive disease. Paul says, I'm physically exhausted from caretaking. Margie, we show up daily while feeling helpless. And I love my partner deeply, but some days I'm simply exhausted from carrying everything. So when energy is consumed by caregiving tasks and emotional stress, we know that intimacy can become deprioritized, even when the emotional connection and even when the love is strong. Recognizing caregiver fatigue as both a physical and relational issue is essential in supporting the well-being of both partners and preserving the opportunities for closeness and connection. That is so important. I think in normal day-to-day, we all could use reminders of this and add on all the burdens that we talk about. It's important to point out, and we're going to continue to touch upon this in the next few slides.
Thank you, Gioia. Yes, so in addition to what you said about exhaustion and fatigue, that kind of plays into the role change that occurs. So We have a quote here from Gunny about her thoughts. I'm going to read a little bit more of the full quote to you guys because I think there's a little bit more detail that didn't fit on the screen that's interesting to hear. As my role as wife shifts more to caregiver, I found it harder and harder to be aroused, but he kept telling me being intimate was the only thing that made him happy, so I continued to do it for him because I love him and would do anything to make him happy. But now that his needs are just so big, I can't do it anymore, in part because I find it hard to find the desire, and in part because I'm exhausted. I finally told him how I feel, but I feel like I broke his heart. I feel guilty. I feel like I may have ruined things. I still struggle sometimes. Medication has helped, but it's a constant weight on my mind. I think that's such a pointed, honest and brutally honest quote that was shared. And I'm very thankful that Gunny shared that with us. But it really does just make you pause and think there's just so many factors on both sides of this. And then Britt, from our pal's perspective, is saying, I didn't want my partner as my sole caregiver. I wanted him to be my equal again. And I think those kind of complement each other nicely in sending that same message. Before I go on to a few things about the role change, Desi, Alex, I think during our brainstorming sessions, you guys had some really interesting thoughts about this topic. I'm not sure if you would feel comfortable sharing that or have something prepared.
The physical aspects of ALS are really hard to accept. I had a really hard time when it got to the point where traditional sex wasn't possible for my husband anymore. I guess laying there like a corpse wasn't a big turn on. I equated my appeal with sex, but that wasn't fair to me. If you couldn't already tell, I was always the horny one ready to jump my husband's bones and was often in control. Losing that control was really difficult, but we found new routines that worked for us. Right now, our routine is that when he's feeling it during the week, he will use a vibrator on me and make sure my needs are being met.
Way to go. You jumped ahead there,
The
Alex.
direct quote
Yep.
from our group XXX chat. In order to initiate sex, I have given more blowjobs since diagnosis than our entire relationship.
Thank you, Zazie. I wasn't sure if you're going to share that one. I know we talked about it offline, but no, but it's an important point that you both bring up. And Alex, you jumped ahead to a little bit further in our conversation about ways that you can kind of adapt to the role change and the physical changes. So, this role change was discussed in our last session in a lot more depth by Maureen and Dr. Thomas. We'll recap it briefly for those who didn't have a chance to log in. There's a shift, relationship roles shift, confidence may change, initiation roles may change, dominance roles may change, positioning, past patterns just may no longer apply. Additionally, sexual desire, libido, again, confidence is like a running theme here that keeps coming up, may change for one or both partners for a variety of reasons that we've already mentioned. Sometimes there's an unconscious or unintentional stereotype or unintentional judgment of ourselves, of others, that we don't even realize is kind of bubbling below the surface, but it is there and just may impact the relationship. So what worked before may not work anymore, and that's kind of a constantly changing component. It's important also to separate care tasks from intimacy acts. So, dressing and bathing, if your partner's helping with that, those are not sexual and they should remain clearly separate. The key here really is to prioritizing the open communication, as we've all mentioned up until this point. Really support both partners' care and autonomy to preserve your identity, avoid a purely caregiver-patient dynamic, preserve the shared experiences, the schedule a date night, set aside time for shared meals, things you probably a lot of couples have to focus on if there's not an illness thrown into the mix. So creating a sense of normal within this ever-changing normal is really the best strategy to use. And then in addition to role changes, there's physical changes, which Gioia, can you jump to the next slide? Thank you. So just a couple quotes from our community here. Eileen said, "I can't sleep in her hospital bed. It's way too narrow and I miss cuddling." And Jack, on the flip side of this, said, "We have to sleep in different beds now, in different rooms, but she tucks me in at night and gets me up in the morning, and our bedtime routine is very sweet. I feel loved." So that's a beautiful example of how physical things could be changing, but you can still maintain that intimacy and that connection. And then here are some symptoms that can create some of these physical barriers, physical changes that we're alluding to, and we'll explore these more in detail in the next few slides. I just wanted to run through them: spasticity, cramps, clonus, positioning, and confidence. They kind of can go hand in hand. Fasciculations, a comment that we heard when we were speaking with the community about this was, "We are no longer to sleep nestled against each other because his fasciculations wake me up." When the comment of drooling and saliva came up, one person shared that while kissing may no longer be possible, intimacy they still maintain their intimacy through snuggling or nuzzling into each other's necks, and they still feel that brings comfort and intimacy to the relationship. Some other physical changes and physical objects, this positioning of equipment and necessary supports can certainly impact intimacy and comfort during those moments. Sometimes it's an option to, like, for example, NIV, it might be possible to briefly remove it. Do not do anything that is going to be harmful to your health. Safety first, as Joy had mentioned before. But sometimes tubing can be managed or repositioned in a way that kind of allows more ease of movement. All right, so Joy, I'll hand it over to you to get into some of the nitty-gritty and some of the strategies I think that people are waiting for.
Yeah, did Alex want to say something, or we've heard from her already?
I
Okay.
think she shared, but go ahead, Alex, if there's something you want to add, please feel free.
I'm pretty sure she already shared.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Spasticity. Okay. Oh man, who hasn't gotten a cramp? And we all know what that feels like, or a spasm. It's really an awful feeling. Spasms, cramps, clonus, they can all occur, and they all oftentimes do occur. Keep trying, really. That's the thing when that happens, to figure out what actually works for you. I'm interested to hear from others also what does work. It's muscle stiffness, spasm, certain positioning. It's physically uncomfortable. Sexual arousal itself sometimes triggers increased muscle tone or spasms that can certainly interrupt intimacy and really put a pause on the moment. Spasms create anxiety about future sexual experiences. Couples tend to sometimes avoid intimacy altogether if they're not openly discussed and addressed. We've heard this word before. It is important to normalize the experiences and to help people understand that adaptation, communication, and symptom management can support continued intimacy and connection. On the slide, experimenting with different sexual positions, identifying those positions that are most comfortable and that require the least amount of muscle effort or strain. Pillows, wedges, supportive surfaces, they also improve comfort and joint stability and oftentimes help actually position the body in a way that takes and alleviates the burden of having to maintain a position. Take a warm bath, that sometimes helps. Use heat prior to intimacy to help relax muscles and reduce stiffness. Who doesn't love a massage? Incorporate gentle massage and stretching before sexual activity. That could be really sexy, right? It helps reduce muscle tension. Provide support and proper alignment of joints and limbs during positioning. We do that through wedges and pillows and other types of support, slings. Scheduling intimacy, knowing your body, scheduling intimacy during those times of the day when energy and symptom control are typically at their best. Sometimes morning, afternoon, after meds, in the evening, after a warm bath. Discuss medication timing. We've heard this before. I think Shara mentioned it. Discuss your medication timing with your healthcare provider, especially if anti-spasticity medications are used. Intimacy can be adapted safely and compassionately rather than focusing on the disability lost alone. And it can be fun. Positioning is really important. It's an important consideration for maintaining comfort, safety, and intimacy. Weakness, fatigue, spasticity, respiratory changes, joint discomfort. They can all make positions physically demanding or even unsafe if adaptations are not considered. Many couples benefit from practicing positioning ahead of time so that intimacy feels less stressful and more comfortable when the moment arises. You know, have a practice moment, have a rehearsal. Medical accommodations and adaptive equipment, including pillows, wedges, orthoses, lifts, positioning devices can all help reduce strain, support alignment, and conserve energy. Side-by-side positioning, positions that minimize weight bearing, positions that really reduce physical exertion are oftentimes comfortable and sustainable, allowing each other to focus more on the connection than the real physical effort. Minimize weight bearing or physically demanding movements, practice position. Again, we talked about that prior to. Consider adaptive orthoses or lifts. Someone asked, is it safe to have sex in a Hoyer? The answer probably is no. But you know, check the weight limit, and I don't know, I might want to do that over a bed just to be careful. Explore side-by-side positioning. Partner on top sometimes works, right? Partner on top to reduce that exertion and the respiratory strain, especially if there's respiratory compromise during a flat lying position. Wheelchair arms, right? Individuals can sit on the lap of the pals in the wheelchair, facing away for rear entry positioning. That is pretty safe. Face-to-face does increase intimacy, but it can be fun to turn it around. Consider, it's not only fun, it's pleasurable. Consider a wheelchair with removable arms. If you can't straighten your legs due to spasticity, maybe an effective position might be a man on his back. Wheelchair safety. It's important to maintain and to understand that wheelchairs are mobility devices rather than intimacy equipment, and that safety precautions are super important. You want to reduce the risk of falling, tipping, or accidental movement of the wheelchair during intimate activity. Simple strategies work, like make sure the powering off of the wheelchair, if it's a power wheelchair, turn the power off. Secure the locks of your wheelchair. Make sure you know your weight limits, that you respect them. They improve stability and confidence. Anti-tip bars and positioning the wheelchair next to sturdy furniture or wall to provide additional support and reassurance. I mean, the conversations about that, might feel uncomfortable, might not be that sexy, but safely addressing openly and upfront really helps improve the safety. And intimacy aids. Intimacy aids certainly help people, all people, people with ALS and partners. They help maintain communication, safety, and the connection to the physical needs. The supports are not about replacing the intimacy, but really rather adapting it in ways to reduce strain, conserve energy, and support participation. Simple accommodations like positioning pillows and wedges, adjustable beds, lubricants, some, I think Desi mentioned, CBD, THC, etc. Communication devices, transfer equipment, they all can improve comfort and reduce anxiety. Environmental modifications, like including privacy, looking at the lighting, coming up with a comfortable temperature, relaxation strategies before and sometimes during deep breathing, etc. There's a wide range of disability intimacy aids available to suit different needs and preferences, including vibrating devices, harnesses, positioning supports, sensory stimulation tools, and sorry, I lost my place. A wedge or a ramp that provides that props up body parts, that they're very helpful. And there are a variety of companies that provide straps to help you stay in place without depending on preference or need. Side by side individual positioning, right? One person lays on their side, the pillow or towel between their legs, and spooning from behind.
Question, Gioia. So someone in the audience asked, what about single pals who do not have a partner? So I
So
guess
this,
that's where you get to the vibrator
yeah,
section,
we're,
probably.
we're, we're getting there. Just give us a second.
Okay, perfect.
They jumped
I mean,
ahead.
masturbation is really self-pleasure is really important, and we do have some information on that. And I think Shara.
Yeah. So just briefly here, it's kind of tagging on to the intimacy aids. If for bulbar symptoms, as we mentioned earlier, there is medication for drooling, and then that also just be mindful of the drying effects that it can have on other areas. Sexing, as Alex said before, is just a really thoughtful, well-crafted compliment that could really go a long way to make somebody feel desired or valued. It can be simple, direct, but highly effective. Oral vibrators, which are, oh, sorry, Gioia, something showing, there you go. These can be some alternatives for oral stimulation. So they're designed to mimic tongue-like sensations and movement, something to consider if your tongue function is limited. Smile Makers is just a brand. I know that nobody probably knows what that word means, but it's a brand that has a bunch of different toys that mimic tongue movement. So at the end, if you guys want, we can share some links and resources to all of the things that you're seeing and that we're talking about here. And then safe word and gestures is just something that has come up. Using an AAC in intimate moments is still a very under-researched area. So I don't really have a ton of suggestions from there, but if communication is difficult, something that we often talk about is establishing a safe word or some sort of gesture system in advance so that you are supporting comfort and consent. Alex, I know you had a really interesting comment that you shared with us offline that you might be interested in sharing about pseudobulbar affect.
Just a small note here for those who have pseudobulbar affect. It's not especially sexy to look down and have someone smiling up at you like a lunatic. I learned that the hard way.
Thank you. So we're going to go through, we have a couple, we want to get to the stuff you guys want to talk about. So we're going to skip ahead for some of these slides that we have just to get to the questions you guys have asked. But the takeaway is there is no right way to be intimate. There's no right way to have sex. It's just kind of about being adaptive and being creative. So Gioia is going to touch on some environmental things, and then I will go into the question that everybody asked about vibrators. We have a slew of slides for you for that.
Just a quick note, we have about 5 minutes left, but we could probably run over about 5 minutes since the next session doesn't start till 2. So
Oh,
just a heads up.
thank you, Katie. Much appreciated.
Thank you for that. Setting the stage, right? Just make your place sexy. Pre-planning, maybe some alone time, fun and games. Tell your partner what you do like to do and what you don't like to do, and blindfolds and feathers and all of those things. Mental and sensory stimulation, sight, sound, smells, and tastes to make sexual activity more important. More enjoyable. And aromatherapy, candles, music, visualization, meditation, right? Just pre-planning, really thinking it out, role playing. I mean, all of the things. Book an appointment. Uh, Mental and sensory stimulations. Sexual activity is more enjoyable when the environment is calm and or exciting. However it is that you like to set up your stage, do it. It's worth it.
Yeah, Gioia, we comment that my camera went off. That these are things that you could have done before. It's just sometimes just having the reminder of how to kind of create the mood is just a good reminder to have. So
Yeah, and I think when you're down in it and you're tired and you're fatigued and you have all of those things that we talked about throughout the presentation, it's hard to keep the me time, the our time, and really to put some time into creating that nice intimate environment. Some tools on the slide. Vibrators consider self-stimulation or mutual stimulation. Lubricants, they reduce discomfort and sex toys. I think we have some links to some of the sex toys that we have investigated. Flirting, sexting, just flirting throughout the day, sending nice little messages. Sometimes porn is your thing, like a little pornography. If that's your thing, goes a long way. Literature, reading sexy books together. Is this, yeah.
So to the question that everyone's been asking, we see a couple of these questions coming through in the chat. Sex toys, adaptable sex toys. So there's no right way to use a sex toy in just at all, whether illness, no illness. But there are certain ones that we have found in talking to the community and in our research that seem to be a little bit more helpful for people just based on like their design. So the wand, the magic wand, which is pictured right here, is adaptable, kind of can help reduce fatigue, maybe enhance your experience. This one is a lightweight toy. It has a long, flexible handle that really helps with reaching certain areas if that's something that is harder for you to do. You can incorporate whatever assistive device you use for reaching with a sex toy. You can put foam or kind of fabric or, a universal cuff can be used on either your a sex toy that you have. Alternatives, bear with me, we're just getting real here. A power toothbrush with a glove for hygiene, and a universal cuff is something that you might be able to find if you to try. I mean, just really get creative. That's what we've been saying, like reclaim, reinvent, as it says on the side of the slide here. Putting the vibrator inside of a sponge, wrapping tape around the sponge for a handle. There's really no wrong way to do this, or there's no right way either. So it's really about just figuring out what works for you by yourself with your partner. Joy, can you just go back for 1 second to the, I just want to touch on the finger sleeves there. So mini vibrator or the finger sleeves. So mini vibrators are, there are a couple different kinds. They are lightweight, they fit in your hand, but some of them require some grip. So the finger sleeves are lightweight. They can be worn on the finger or the hand. There's, as you can see, there's two different options that I showed pictures here. They have texture, some are textured, some are not. The only thing is that they might require some assistance with charging or battery changes. So that's just something to keep in mind. They are really useful tools that you don't need a firm grasp for. It just allows for a gentle touch. You can use it on yourself to enhance sensation. You can use it for pleasuring a partner. There are websites, but some of these, honestly, you can also just get off of Amazon. And some of the finger sleeves you can get in bulk off Amazon. So, all right, next slide. Sorry, we're rushing through this, but I just want to touch on all this for you guys. Another one that came up that was a big conversation was for self-stimulation or mutual stimulation was a wearable vibrators. I know Alex alluded to this also earlier in some of her comments. These are some examples during our workshop session. This is something that came up a lot as a helpful option to support like a range of needs and preferences. So the wearable vibrators can affix to really any part of the body. Again, get creative. The top one in purple is the dual rockin' rabbit ring. This is a vibrator that works on a penis, a dildo. It could be worn on the hand for easy grasp external use. It can be worn on the underside of the penis where it is mostly used for the pleasure of the wearer. If it is worn on the top, it can stimulate the other partner. It can kind of be used in a variety of ways. The Mod Touch wearable vibe is small. It is not a super buzzy vibe, if that's important to anybody, but the design of it is that it really can fit between fingers or toes without requiring any strong grip or motility. So that is an option. Again, get creative. The navy blue like ring can be worn it's called the We Vibe ring. It can be worn on the scrotum or above the shaft of the penis whether it's for the person's pleasure or partner in certain positions, depending on which position you put that on in. And the vibrating underwear is a little bit more commonly known, I think, but that also does have a remote control option, which you see here. And then it's a little bit hard to see in that picture, but there's a tiny little vibrator that can go into the slip of the underwear. Next slide, Gioia. And
I'm
then,
sorry, it's time to wrap up, so I don't know if you wanted to get to like one of the questions that
yes,
we
let
had
me just say like one
pre-prepared.
thing on this because this was something that
Okay.
I know was talked in our group. This is remote control toys. So there are toys out there that your partner can use a phone or you can use your phone. You could use eye gaze. You could mirror your phone on your device to control your device. And so sorry, rush through the good part, but there is we could share any of this information that if you guys have more questions, reach out to us. But yes, we certainly do want to get to your questions. So please ask away, Katie.
So I was talking about the ones that we had pre-prepared. So I know Alex prepared a few responses to the even numbered questions from the two of you.
Yes.
So if there's one that you want to prioritize to ask, and then Alex can answer.
I leave it to you, Alex and or Des to you know, one last statement or something that you hope that everybody takes away from our session today.
Okay, I'll ask a question to Alex. It was, what would make conversations about any of these topics feel more supportive and less difficult to talk about in clinic visits?
I think bringing it up like any other topic would be great. I think we act as if discussing sex openly is taboo, but I'd love to simply be handed resources and then explore them with my husband and ask questions as we go.
Great. I think that's a great takeaway for the professionals who I know are zoomed in and watching. And Desi, were there any final thoughts that you?
She actually had to step away to
Oh,
get
she
ready for
did.
the next panel.
Oh,
Yeah, so I
got
think
it.
we can end here.
All right. Well, I just want to thank everybody for, um, especially the Her ALS team here for really making the Her ALS story for making this just really enlightening for us and useful. And again, sorry for the rushing through some of the strategies at the end. Feel free to reach out to Gioia and I with any questions that come up after. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.